What's going on, everyone? I'm Christopher Moran, and this is my testimony.
So starting off with your childhood, how was that like for you?
Yeah, so my childhood, it wasn't as egregious as some people. I mean, for me, I was raised in a Christian home until yeah, I was raised in a Christian home. We went to Rocky Peak, but then when my parents got divorced when I was in eighth grade, I started getting in trouble. That's when I was introduced to weed at the time, and then from there things just started. I started getting in trouble a lot. I got expelled from my first high school in Arizona, and then we we move out here to Chatsworth, and I go to Chatsworth High School for a semester. And then we moved to Newbury Park, and in the meantime I was getting in trouble over and over all the time. So when my dad and I talked, most of the time he was yelling at me and going through something. Uh, so by the time I get to Newbury Park, my first semester there, I get expelled for about so that's 4 months I was going there. I got expelled for probably 27 days total, and that's why I got expelled. So, but they let me come back on eight different contracts. Like I had to do community service with the janitors. I had to go to summer school, and basically I did that till I eventually got. My dad kicked me out of the house in my senior year, so I was home I was living on couch surfing till I graduated. And like the last 6 months of high school, I was living with friends, couch surfing, and going to yeah different houses, and then eventually I graduated, and then by that time I'm living on my friend's side yard. So all in all, my childhood wasn't as traumatic. I mean, my mother, she has BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, where um it's like she was verbally abusive, and then my dad, he wouldn't really stick up for us. So my view of what a father was, I didn't. In relation to God, I definitely didn't. He we're good now, but back then I definitely didn't feel like I could rely on him. All right, so yeah, after I graduate high school, I'm couch surfing on a different friends' couches, but the last one, he ditched me at a Del Taco, and so from there, on the payphone, I called my father, and I was like, Dad, could you help me? And my dad, he told me to fuck off and lose his number, and so, but he gave me the number to my martial arts instructor, so I called him, and that's how I got into the military. He's like, you can live with me, but you got to go to every Krav Maga class I have. You got to cook for my family, and you got to join the military. So I get into the army, that was a process in of itself. And so we go to basic in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then I get to my duty station, which is Fort Hood, Texas. And it is September, and then I meet my medic, who became my best friend, and him and I start doing triple C's, drinking all the time, and we're doing that ecstasy, acid. We're going to like pool halls, tripping on acid, like sticks, playing pool. Then we deployed to South Korea, and that's when things get pretty intense. I remember there's a very intense time. Up to this point, I can have an attitude. I'm insubordinate. I don't like authority. So one of my NCOs, when we were in the field in South Korea, he says something to me, and I piss him, and I push him, and so he remembers that. Instead of well, I don't want to say that. So the way he punishes me for that, it's the winter in South Korea, and it gets cold. It gets very cold, and he makes me clean one of the Humvees, and by myself, like totally clean it, and it's -11 in that time, and so I'm out there for probably 16 hours, and I'm freezing, and that was traumatic for me, but I didn't know it at the time that I was going to be as bad. But we get back from South Korea, and every night I'm drinking myself to sleep at night, like all the time. I'm not going to the gym, and I got a case of what we call the fuckets. I'm smoking pot on base in Fort Hood, Texas. This is after we deploy back from South Korea, so I'm back from there, and like I said, I'm smoking pot. I'm getting very just in your face about the drugs I'm doing. I'm doing cocaine off my desk. I get caught for that. CID up to this point has had me in investigations for like stealing from the PX, the cocaine, the smoking pot on, and that's the thing I get caught for is the smoking weed on base. And so, but I trained really hard, so I had sergeants that were like looking out, other than the one that got irritated with me in South Korea. Other NCOs were, they liked me because I trained really hard. And so I get discharged with a general under honorable discharge. It's an honorable discharge. The only benefit I don't have is my GI Bill, which is how we go to excuse me, which is how we go to college for free. So that in of itself is a blessing. I didn't see it at the time. And so I'm out of the military, and I'm at I'm out in Ventura at the Ventura Beach RV Resort, and I remember I'm just bored of the drugs I was doing, like cocaine, weed. I'm just like bored of that, and so I started doing meth, and just out of nowhere, and from there, something happened. I get injured on work, and they piss test me, and I get fired because I pop hot for meth. And from there, that same martial arts instructor who got me to the military, he takes me in and lets me live at his Krav Maga school, but I still haven't dealt with my addiction. So I'm doing meth, and then one day I'm just bored of that, and I'm like, I might as well start doing heroin. And so I do heroin for about a week, and then I start using needles, and I love it. And I'm like mixing it and doing all this stuff, and then about a month later, he finds out, and he actually calls my sponsor now, and my best friend who's been on this podcast, David, he calls him and is like, what is this Coke can? It was a cooker. And David tells him that. And so he kicks me out of David tells him what it is. And so he kicks me out of the studio. And I've made amends since then, but this is what happens. I have a key and I know all the safe combinations. So I start breaking into the studio because I have a key to the gate, and I unlatch a window that's behind a dresser. So I am able to open the gate and get through the dresser and take money from the safes. And I start doing that a few times. And eventually I get caught for that, and I go to jail, and I don't know how jail works. So I get sentenced to program, and I remember I'm waiting, and I wait 4 months for the first one. I get out, and I get sentenced to program. I go to that program, but I'm there for about 3 weeks before I start using again. And then I go on the run, and I leave, and then I go back I get caught, and I go back to jail. Oh no, I didn't go on I get sentenced to program again, and I'm waiting this time to go to the next program, and I'm waiting for another 4 months. And then I get out, and I just make the decision that I don't ever want to get clean, and so things just start spiraling worse. At this point, my dealer, she introduces me to fentanyl, and I'm on the streets, and so I'm living out of a bandos. And then I'll just say this is when my story starts getting pretty intense, because I'm introduced to fentanyl, and just like a spiral, it just starts getting faster and faster and more out of control. And so because of fentanyl, I would overdose, and I didn't care. It wasn't an awakening for me. It was more of an annoyance. So I'd be in the ambulance or at the hospital, and all I would care about is I would check my sock to see if I still had my dope. And if I did, I would just like, okay, I'll just leave. And if I didn't, that's when I would stay there. But most of the times when I did, I would do something called AMA. That's when you leave against medical advice. And I kept doing that over and over. And one of these times, they actually they found I had an infection on my spine, and I had cellulitis. My legs would be this swollen. The needle exchange off Hollywood and Schroeder, because I was homeless in Koreatown, MacArthur Park, and Hollywood, and there was a needle exchange, and they were like, you got to go to the hospital. My legs would be, like I said, swollen like this. I was hunched over. I didn't know why. I just knew that my spine was hurting. So I'm at the hospital at this point. One of the last few times I've overdosed, well, I don't know how much, but one of the times they tell me I have this infection called osteomyelitis, and it's eating away at certain areas, eating away at my spine. And I don't care, and I AMA, and it keeps getting worse, and I'm more and more hunched over. And so at this point, I don't know this, but they called my family and told my brother that you told my father you have to find your son. He has probably 5 days to live. And so my brother drives out from Chicago, finds me on Skid Row. I was at Skid Row at this time, and like takes a picture with me to say bye to me. And it was extreme. Like I said, it was extremely painful. Every probably 10 minutes. It felt like I had a Charlie horse on my side, and I was just hunched over, like it was it was excruciating. But so he convinces me to go to the hospital, and so I do. I go to the hospital, and they find the infection in time and give me a spine and do a surgery on my spine. And I'm in a rehab called the domiciliary on the West LA grounds. And I remember after a while, my trigger is boredom. I get bored, and even though things are going well, I'm like, I know exactly what would make this less bored. And I go on OfferUp, and I find someone to deal fentanyl, and he delivers it. And so I get a fentanyl. Of course, my tolerance is shot, so I overdose, and they find out, and I try to lie, but they know I was overdosing. They had to use Narcan to wake me up, and I told the nurse, no, I didn't overdose on fentanyl. She's like, we had to use I told the EMT, I was like, I didn't overdose, and they're like, I didn't overdose, and they told me we had to use Narcan to wake you up. The only time that works is when you're overdosing. And so boom, I get kicked out. And yeah, I go to Tarzana, and I'm there for about 10 days, Tarzana Treatment Center, and then I get bored again, and I leave. And the infection comes back, and I know that because I see my reflection, and my spine is swollen, the upper portion of my back. And so, but I still don't do anything about it, and I keep feeling that same pain that I talked about earlier. And the first surgery that they did was they had to put a rod in my spine in my back to hold my spine up. And so, but I go back to the streets and I get the same infection. And I remember I wake up on the side of a McDonald's, and every time I take in a breath, it feels like I'm being hit with a defibrillator, and my legs are sprawling out, and I can't breathe because it's like no matter how small it's just like I'm feeling it. And then the ambulance, I finally yell at someone to call an ambulance. I crawled off the embankment and grabbed my suitcase, and I'm holding onto it. And then someone calls the ambulance, and then they take me to Hollywood Presbyterian, but they don't believe me because I'm just some homeless, dirty dude that is freaking out. And so they discharge me the next day in a wheelchair. And I'm an addict, and so I find someone and I sell it to them. So I sell it to a wheelchair to a person for like $20, and so and I get fentanyl, and I'm on the side of the road, and I call. So somehow I get someone to let me use their cell phone, and I call my father, and he comes down and he takes me to the West LA VA, and they do an emergency surgery, and I have to learn how to walk again. They had to extend the rods that extend the construction of my spine, and I'm in the hospital for this was only 4 weeks at this time, and I'm using a cane to get around because I have to learn how to walk again. But this was not my rock bottom, and as soon as the rehab I was in that I overdosed, the domiciliary, they won't take me back because I OD'd, and so I say F it, I say fuck it again, and I go back to the streets. And less than a year later, the most intense event situation I've ever experienced happened. So the learning how to walk again the first time, being that paralyzed, that wasn't my rock bottom yet. And so less than a year later, I don't know the time frame, but it was less than a year, the first time learning how to walk again happens. I believe I completely lost my mind in the program. There's the second step. We believe that a power greater than ourselves would restore us to sanity. And that's, by definition, what just happened, because I lost my mind. The last month or so, I would walk, I didn't wear a shirt. I didn't have shoes, and I used a shoestring to hold up my shorts. And I used the curb as a pillow. And so it's December 19th. 2021, and it's pouring rain, and I'm freezing my ass off, and the PTSD I have is from the cold, like what happened because of what happened in South Korea. And so I'm freaking out, and I remember because of what I was doing for the first few months that I was on the streets being a bodyguard for a drug dealer, I made a lot of enemies, and that's my fault because you can't do bad. Anyways, so there's someone in this tent, and he's using a blanket, And I'm begging him, can I please use a piece of this blanket? It's not even a tent, it's a canopy, and it's leaking, it's wet around it. And I'm like, can I please use a piece of your blanket? I'm freezing. And he's like, no. And I like, please. And he says no again. And I lay on the edge of the mud right by his blanket, and I use a part of it to cover me. And he calls me a faggot and starts hitting me he hits me in the face a couple times, starts hitting me in the body, and he has a gun, and he's hitting me in the face with his gun and the body. And then I get up and I walk out and I like run into the wall that's right there, and then I fall on the streets. I go from the wall to the streets. It's on the side of this path building. And after I keep trying to get up and walk up the curb, but I can't. Every time I do, I'm just like falling. I'm not just falling where I'm catching myself, I'm like landing on the ground, like landing. And it's still pouring rain, and I start like dragging and crawling and half stumbling, trying to get up and to all the way, because I see a mattress, and I get to it, and I'm there. I'm like, I'm doomed. Like, this is it. And like I couldn't move, and I was so bad that I'll say it like this, there was a porta potty across the street, and I couldn't get up to use it to go to the bathroom. And even still, someone from this, it's called Text Switch, this lady Ellen, she's part of this Moms in Recovery group. She comes and finds me the next night, and has me video chat with my mom. I didn't know this at the time, but she was having me video chat with my mom to say goodbye to my mom. But I'm so out of it that I think I'm just having a normal conversation with my mother, and I'm telling my mom I'm doing good, I'm okay. And so the next day, so this is the following morning, so I've been on this mattress for 2 nights now. No, 2 days. Well, whatever. I've been on there for a couple days. And my mom comes and finds me on the streets, and she's hysterical. And she's like, you need to get you to the hospital. I'm like, no, Mom, I'm doing good. Everything's okay. I'm fine. Just go up to that tent right there and just buy me like a dime of fentanyl. This is $10 of fentanyl, and just go away and just give that to me and just leave. And she was like, no. She's like, my mom's stubborn, thank God. And she called the paramedics and told them I got hit by a car, so that they would come. And they saw me in that state, and they told me, you have 2 options. You're going to jail, you're getting 5150 again, or you got to go to the hospital. And so they helped clean me up, and my mom took me into her car. She put a tarp down on the back seat and had me sitting there, and she took me to the West LA VA, and I black out. When they admit me, I don't remember everything. I just remember getting there, and then I black out. And it's the day before Christmas. So it's 2 days now, and I can barely see. I can't speak. I'm slurring my words when I'm talking to the nurses for snacks, and I can't move my legs. And my first thought was, how am I going to get drugs into the hospital? Like, how am I going to get drugs now? I even called my dealer, and I was trying to trade. I tried to trade a Vital machine to my dealer for a shot of fentanyl, and of course she says no. And when I finally speak to the surgeons, they tell me that I had an infection on my heart valve called endocarditis, which was pumping septic emboli throughout my body. It attacked my liver, my lungs, my kidneys. My lungs were failing. I had COVID, they said, and it clotted in my brain, which caused me to have several strokes, they said, and I was having seizures, hence why I blacked out. I was having seizures throughout the nights, and yeah. So that's what they told me, and then they also tell me like I have to have open heart surgery to remove the infection, because it's resistant to antibiotics. If you remember me telling my story, I would AMA from the hospital with whatever infection I have. I would just AMA, so they kept getting worse and worse and worse. So when I got an infection again, that's exactly what just happened with this one. It was resistant to antibiotics. So I'd have an open heart surgery, and I had to learn how to walk in. I was discharged I was there for 72 days. I remember I was discharged. My dad was carrying my walker, and I was in a wheelchair. And but before I was discharged, they had told me that it was very likely I was never going to be able to walk again without assistance, without a cane. But thank God, every time I go to the hospital, I visit this man. His name was Derek. He's one of my physical therapists. I will never forget this. He took me to the side and said, if you put your head down and and shut up about it, you can learn how to walk again. They can't tell you that, because if that somehow it doesn't happen, you can sue the hospital. So they're very careful about telling someone that, and that's what he told me. And so I did. I remember 6 months later, I throw away my cane, but I'm still not done. I have another surgery. The same year, I had the open heart in February, and then so in November, I have a spine surgery. Remember that they had to, so September, they removed all the hardware in my spine that was holding my spine up. They removed all that, and then the next month, I was in the hospital for a month. And then, so November, they removed one of my ribs and a piece of my hip to grind into a powder and fuse my spine back together. And the areas that were missing because of the osteomyelitis, there were areas of my spine that were missing, and so they had to fuse it. They had to make some kind of a putty with my bones to fuse it together. And that after this, I would still have to. They told me the best way to heal that is to walk and do exercise, but the only kind of exercise I can do is walking. But because of my stroke and everything that's happened, that's difficult. So I remember it's either December or January. Up to this point, my father had taken me into his house to help me learn how to walk again. I was going back and forth between my mom's house and my dad's house, and so I remember he was very helpful. And so we go on a walk around the block, and I can barely walk around the block. I'm trudging. It's like every step, it's like a weight on my ankle. And I remember all the memories of me as a soldier in the military. I was an infantryman. When I was in South Korea, my medic and I, just for fun, we'd bear crawl up this hill as like to exercise. I was what's called a PT stud. All those memories are hitting me, and I'm like, I can barely walk around the block, and it's my fault. I did this to myself, and I was contemplating suicide at that point, and so I put my dealer's number in my phone to either get a gun or get enough fentanyl to off myself. And something I know now that it was God, but something was telling me, don't do it. You have an appointment in 6 months, in 6 or 7 months. Go to that appointment. And I'm not expecting good news. Most of the time that I've had appointments, they would tell me I was either going to die, or like you're gonna die if you keep using, or they would just tell me all this negative stuff. So I was not expecting good news.
So what was life on the streets for you like as a fentanyl addict?
So life on the streets, it was not as glamorous as people talk about us being like lazy and stuff or whatever, but it was very stressful. I remember like I was on the streets for 4 years. Out of those 4 years, I probably had like 50 good days where I was like not fighting to get drugs or not having to hold a sign. That's what I did. I would hold a sign on the side of the road. That was crazy. But then I was doing that, and then people would drive by me, and like I holding my sign. Like one time I said, "Army vet, please help," and someone drove by and threw like nickels and pennies at me and said like, "Army vet, my ass," and shit like that. And then, but for me, so that sucked. But then for me, I overdosed a lot, and I would wake up. That was a very intense overdose. That my nickname on the streets was ODC, which meant overdose Chris, because of all the times that I overdosed. So there was one time I OD'd 3 times within 36 hours of it. Like within 2 days, I overdosed 3 times. That's where I got that nickname. I shot up so much that my veins, I used up all the veins. I started using the veins in my legs, like my hands, my legs, my arms. I have scars from that now. I got so bad I used up all the legs, all the veins in my legs and feet and arms. So it was, yeah.
So what was life for you on Skid Row?
Life for me on Skid Row, that was intense as well. I remember, so I didn't have a tent. Like I made a bad name for that myself. So a couple times when I came back to my tent, it would be set on fire or something. Like people didn't like me, so I didn't have a spot. So I was sleeping on the sidewalk. They had a lot of outreaches and stuff, but I remember I saw some pretty intense things. Like they could have been friends just hanging out, and then someone would be like on meth and just getting amped up, and he would just stab his friend. Like, they'd get into an argument and he would just stab his friend. That's why I got stabbed. Someone cut my leg open one time on Skid Row because like, he was trying to search something on Google on his phone, and I was just saying things to make it mess up and he stabbed me, cut my leg open. And people don't want to help you when they do that. Like, I was like bleeding a lot, and I was like yelling, asking someone to call an ambulance, and then someone happened to drive by and see that, and they called an ambulance. But the people around, like, if they see something like that, they don't want to be that person because they believe they can become a target. And so that was intense. I remember like, everything I had, I sold. Anything that was worth, like, if something was worth $5, I would sell that. That's why you see people like, I haven't seen many people with nice things on Skid Row, because I would buy something that was nice, and but if I had money, I would buy something that was nice with my check. But as soon as the cash ran out and I couldn't buy fentanyl, and my fentanyl ran out, I would sell the nice things I had, like if it was a hut or something, for whatever it was, for whatever it cost. So I was there's not many places I could shower. What we do is it's called popping a hydrant, where you get a tool to open a fire hydrant, and that's how we'd shower. But like, we couldn't really do that in the winter because it was so cold. And I remember, to me, the reason why things got so bad medically is because I stopped taking advantage of the showers and the outreach that they had there. Like, to me, for some reason, it was taking too much time to go and shower, and so I was just really off the rails out there. And so another, like, crazy things would happen, like when I was at MacArthur Park, one of my good friends, Flacco, I remember he walks up to a group of people, and they have an exchange of words. I don't know what was said, and then he walks back to his tent, walks out, and then he shoots the guy. And, like, right in front, I was probably about 50 feet away from this. That was one of the things that I saw. One time, I mean, I got down with somebody, but I was holding a box cutter, and somehow, like, I think it was an accident, like, his face got cut open. Like, there's things like a lot of crazy things happened, and that's I got into fights a lot of times because he was disrespecting my dealer. There's a lot of things like that would happen on the streets. So yeah, that's like I was saying. I really hit a rock bottom, not being able to walk around that block, the block. And like I said, I was contemplating suicide, and I was going to off myself, and that was really my rock bottom. But I remember this voice was telling me, just wait for this appointment, just wait 6 months, like, it's going to be better. And I had already had a year clean, but I was not. I was still morbidly depressed, and so I wait that 6 months, and I have this appointment, and like I said, I'm not expecting good news, but I'm talking to the surgeon, and I'm kind of indignant. I remember because the reason why I had got clean when I was in the hospital is I saw an advertisement that was advertising supplements, and it was a workout couple, and I remember seeing that, and it was like, that's my dream, is to have a gym bay and that I could, like, grow old with and, like, have kids with. And my vision when I had a year clean was like, that's gone. And so that was my rock bottom, because I couldn't walk around the block. And so I go to that appointment, and it's 6 months, and I'm talking to the surgeon, and I'm not expecting good news. I'm expecting to hear something off, and I'm kind of indignant. And I was like, okay, so tell me, surgeon, can I do curls? Can I do push-ups? He's like, oh, you want to work out? And I was like, yes. And he says, dude, you can do anything you want. Looking at your chart, it's almost like the 5 years that you were a junkie didn't happen. You can do martial arts again. You can do yoga. You can do CrossFit. You can go back to the gym. And I didn't know that was God yet, but, like, I dropped my phone, and I was like, oh, like, I said to myself at the time, oh, okay, God's real, and he's working for me. And so because he told me I can have my life back. And then the next month, I make amends to my martial arts instructor who I robbed in my addiction. I even totaled his car, his truck that he was lending me, and I'm able to pay him back, and that felt good. And then 4 months later, I get the keys to my own apartment. This is where we're at now. And so it's the beginning of last year. This is January, which is a year ago, the anniversary of me contemplating suicide. And instead, I get baptized at Freedom Church right here by David Lecomte. He baptizes me. And things have just gotten more and more better. Like I can't describe to you how phenomenal things are. There are so many things I could talk to you about right now, but I'll say this: the biggest one. Do you remember how my dad and my mom, they were all visiting me on the streets? 2 weeks ago, a week ago actually, my dad was at my men's stag meeting and gave me a cake for having 3 years clean. And then my mother is going to be here on Tuesday, this following Tuesday, to give me a cake as well for having 3 years clean. My mom, my dad, they're all my whole family's going to be there. My older brother, him and I are going to Colombia in 5 months or so. We're going to be doing that. Like, life has been so good because of God. Yeah, because of God. Everything good I have in my life now is because of Jesus Christ.
What advice would you give to anyone suffering from addiction?
So the advice I would give is there is hope. Do not give up. Because I know when I was on the streets, it's not so much that I didn't want a better life. I didn't think I could do it. I thought I was so far gone that I was like, this is how it is. And also at the same time, at the flip side, I also encourage families and friends of family members and friends of people that are on the streets, that to not give up on them, that there's hope for them. Because I know that my family visiting me and my brother, I wanted to be a part of the real life again, because I knew I had some people I could turn to. And so these people that think that if you keep being hard on addicts and keep doing that is, I personally can say that who wants to be a part of a community that treats you like shit and puts you down? No one. So if you have friends and family members that are struggling, just love them, just hang out with them, because the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection and wanting to be a part of real life again. And that's what I would have to say. All right, so I just need everyone to know that if God did it for me, he can do it for you and your friends and your family. Thank you.